Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Somebody just told me over on Instagram, it's past my bedtime, get to bed. It's morning where we are, just so you know. Good morning, everyone. How the devil are we all doing? Lots of people in the house already. Let's have a look. Let's have a quick rattle through. Ken Hatch is here. Dan Collins here. Mark Whiting is here. Gary Muirhead is here. Steve Williamson is here. I think that pretty much rounds it up. Obviously, the others will arrive in the fullness of time. I went to see the Deadpool and Wolverine film last night. If you fancy a good laugh, highly recommended. Ridiculously violent, very, very sweary, but very, very funny. Yeah, really, really funny. Good morning to Chris Ford as well. Chris, he's here as well. Morning, Chris. Hope you're fit and well, my friend. Yes, if anybody ever fancies a good giggle, if that's the kind of thing you're into, very childish humour, but funny. Funnily enough, wanted to see that movie. Also, Twisters. Now, I went to see Deadpool and Wolverine last night, and I was expecting the cinema. We've got an Odeon near us, one of these multiplex jobs. I was expecting it to be absolutely heaving with people going to see the Deadpool and Wolverine movie. We arrived, and lo and behold, lots and lots of people buying their drinks and their popcorn and everything else. But most of them went to see Twisters, which I found very interesting. Alex Latham is here. Good morning, Alex. Ready to talk all things training? I've got nothing in mind about training, but if you'd like to pipe up, feel free, my friend. 30 degrees here. I hate this weather. Today is the first day I am doing a show in shorts. I won't show you. Nobody needs to see that. Let's have a look. Quiet Place Day 1. Looks good too. I must admit, I thoroughly enjoyed. Well, I'm not going to say I enjoyed the first one. I thought the first one was really, really, really tense. For those of you who don't know, there are beasties, monsters, aliens, but they're attracted by sound. So basically, the entire film is pretty much silent. If you make a noise, they get you. Very, very good. Looking forward to seeing the second one. Lots to get through. We've got not so much a rant, more of a discussion, I would say, at the end of the show in our usual after show bit, because we're talking about. I don't know if anybody else saw this, but Rachel Reeves, the incumbent Chancellor of the Exchequer, spent about half an hour yesterday telling us just how broke we are as a nation. Going to get onto that, particularly the implications for all things construction related. So if you fancy a bit of that, please stick around to the end. Between now and then, I've also got to, we've got our question of the day, which will be coming up. We're also going to do the Mystery Machine, but I've also got the Mystery Machine League table. We've got today's Mystery Machine, tomorrow's Mystery Machine, but I can tell you already, the winner by some considerable margin is Mr. Steve Williamson. I'll show you the league table in just a moment, but we do need to get the show underway. So let's do that, shall we? Let's have a bit of this. It is Tuesday, the 30th of July. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, as you all know. In today's show, Kabelco goes Dutch. Mechalak, not as tall as you might think. Mission to Mine Expo coming up. Caterpillar harnesses tech to detect human encroachment. And Martin Smith is crowned Scottish Plant Operator Champion for 2024. And we've got the ever-gorgeous Demolition reporting on all of that. Plus, as I've already flagged this up in our after-show news discussion, we're going to discuss how the financial ineptitude of the previous government will have repercussions for demolition and construction for several years to come. But before we get to all of that, we do have the small matter of today's Mystery Machine. Quick Good morning to Jonathan Duras and Mick Norton. Mick, your button seems to be working. Jonathan, yours does not. So I'm saying good morning to you verbally. Don't know what's going on with that one. I'll give it a good whack tomorrow. So, Mystery Machine. I'll get to today's Mystery Machine, but I said I promised to show you today's league table standings. Here's where we are. 2 more Mystery Machines to solve, today's and tomorrow's, and this is the standings as we are now. There you are. Steve Williamson, way out in front with 27 points. Dan Cullen with a very creditable 12 points. I managed to limp into 3rd place, mainly by cheating. And then you can see we've got Garvin over at Mostly Diggers and Gary Muirhead, Peter McKenna and Jonathan Duras all on 3 points. Very good effort by everyone. But Steve Williamson, do me a favour, Steve. It's probably here somewhere, but do me a favour. Please send me your or remind me of your postal address, and I will get your prize in the post for you in the next 24 hours. Can't say fairer than that. So let's take that away. Jim Turner's just arrived. Morning, Jim. Steve is already feeling pretty smug. I'll just sit back with my feet up. What, you're not going to take part in today's? No? Yeah, I don't believe that for a minute. Jim Turner's already guessing. It could well be a cat scraper. It could. I mean, it's not, but it could. Dan Cullen, thanks to me, Steve got ahead. There was a degree of that. Right, here we are. This is today's Mystery Machine for you to resolve. Yeah, not sure if that's going to be helpful at all. In actual fact, bear with me a second. No, it's okay. For one horrible moment there, I actually thought I had the wrong Mystery Machine up, but I haven't. That is absolutely correct. So if you've got anything on that, I'd love to hear from you. Jim Turner is straight in with a whacker mini digger. It is not one of those. It is not one of those. But keep the guesses coming in. I will reveal a little bit more in just a moment. But we do need to, quickly remind you of today's question of the day, which looks a bit like this. Yeah, let me take that away just for a moment. Our question of the day today is this, quite simply. What is the one thing you could not live without? Now, I'm well aware of the need for water, food, oxygen, so I'm looking for something a bit more personal to you. And I guess, yes, you could say your wife or your children. Personally, I'm going for the company of dogs. The company of dogs. I am at my happiest when I'm surrounded by dogs, and the bigger they are, the happier I am. What about you? What is the one thing you cannot live without? Love to hear from you on all of that. Jim Turner. This would have been my second choice. I'm telling you now. There you are. Tea. Yes. Just finished number 2. Not a number 2. I'm not even going to dwell on that. Let's have a look. Chris Ford, going back to the league table, not even registered on the bottom of the page. Strongest contestant going. Yes, he is propping up the entire league. I have to say that's all the people that scored points. That's it, which I thought was, well, I mean, Steve was basically on fire. Can we sort him out next month, I wonder? Steve Williamson is going for his phone. Ken Hatcher is going for the phone as well. Mick Norton is in full agreement on a good old cup of splosh. Now, let's have a look. This is the Mystery Machine. There's a little bit more. Is there a bit of colour there? No, not really. That's glass. Dan Cullen is going for a Bobcat 3-tonner. Gary Muirhead is going for a Volvo ECR 25 electric. Steve Williamson is going for the Takuchi TB 280 FR. It is none of those things. It is none of those things. So we'll come back to that in just a moment. But first, we need a smidgen of this. Yeah, let's start off with something pleasant to watch, shall we? How about going over to the Netherlands in the company of the fine folks at Cabelco? Yep, we're going Dutch. Going to throw back over to the question of the day, which is, what is the one thing you couldn't live without? Chris Ford is offering a bar of chocolate and a cup of coffee. Can't stand tea. Okay, I'm not with you on that. I'm a tea man through and through. But one thing I would say, I drink coffee with sugar. I drink tea without. And yet a cup of tea never tastes better than when it's accompanied by something chocolatey. Biscuit, Mars bar, whatever it might be. Don't know what that's all about. Gary Muirhead is also going with coffee. That's the thing with you early risers, I guess. You need the coffee to get you through the day. Now, for some reason, a lot of people seem to have got it into their head that our mystery machine today may come from the Takuchi stable. We've got Dan Cullen going for the Takuchi 6-tonner. We've got Jonathan Duras going for the Takuchi TB250 FR. Steve Williamson going for the 250 or 240 rather DPF. From Takuchi, who else do we got here? Dan Cullen is also going for the Takuchi TB257 FR. It is none of those things. It's not a Takuchi. Also, where is he gone? Gary Muirhead is offering up the Wacker-Neuson E217E. It is none of those things. So let me show you a little bit more. That's an interesting one, isn't it? That is an interesting one. Dan Cullen is still going for Takuchi. Definitely not one of those. And Steve Williamson can't live without data. The youth of today, eh? And their need for data. You're absolutely right, though. Where would I be without all of that? Things you can do with data. It's just blows the mind. I was sat here today preparing for an argument with somebody, and I thought I can't be asked to draw up all the facts and figures. So I asked ChatGPT to draw up the figures for me. And it worked. Jonathan Duras says, Masersi mini excavator. It is not one of those, but it is one of those. Have a look. Have a close look. Have a very close look. See what you can come up with. I'm going to take that away because we do. Let me just get rid of that too. And let me press this here button here.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
So, you are required to move your machine from one place to another, and you know that somewhere along the line there is going to be a low bridge, somewhere you can't quite get in with a low loader and a machine on top. You know those blokes at Mechalac? They kind of thought of that. I think I'd prefer it with a push button, you know, like a Porsche or something like that. Speaking of which, has anyone seen the new, I can't even remember the name of it, but the new Bugatti, the replacement for the Chiron? The inside of it looks like it's been designed by people from Mars. It is the most incredible piece of engineering I have ever seen in my entire life. Maybe I'll try and find a bit of footage of it in just a moment and show it to you. In the meantime, let's have a look at this. What have we got here? We left it with Jonathan Duras offering up the Masersi mini excavator. Gary Muirhead, I think inspired by the colour, has gone for the Sunward SWE 220 FED. It is not one of those. Chris Ford, also inspired by the colour scheme. Kobelco ED160 BR. It's not. Gary back with the Sunward again, SWE 25 UF. It is not. And Dan Cullen going for the Pell Job 4TT. I'm just enunciating TT correctly because, you know, we do mention that a lot here. Let me show you a bit more. Does that help? a smidgen more blade. Does that help anybody? Because nobody's got it yet. Keep the guesses coming in. We'll be right back after this. Good comment from Jonathan Duras. He says, to be fair, you very rarely see compact loaders striking bridges, more so excavators. All true. And I did wonder, having read your comment, I wonder if we've just, or if Mechalac have just basically made it easier for criminal gangs to cram more of those into a container for shipping overseas. That's the cynic in me, I'm afraid. Good design, though, says Jonathan. I totally agree. Do love me a bit of Mechalac. They do take a slightly skewed version or a slightly skewed view of the industry. And I love what they come up with, much the same as I do with Black and Nielsen. Now, let me think, where are we? It's about 2 months' time. I'm going to be in Las Vegas again. Want to know why? Well, because this is going on. Yeah, I'm sorry, I was a little bit distracted. I'm just seeing if I can find a video of this new Bugatti. And I'm not seeing one at the moment. I'll keep looking, don't worry. No, in actual fact, I have found one. Let me have a look. Let me see if I can just show it to you now. I'm not entirely sure quite how well this is going to play out, but bear with me for 2 ticks. I've not seen this particular video before, but I would like to show it to you because it is truly astonishing. Share my screen. I need to go for the Bugatti Tourbillon, for that is what it is called. Let me press the play. Share. Yeah, it's ever so slightly out of my price bracket, that. But if you get a chance to go and have a look at it, the Bugatti Tourbillon is what it's called, and it is an astonishing beast, and no mistake. Let's have a look. What have we got here? We're going back to the Mini. The Mini? We're going back to the Mystery Machine. What we got? Chris Ford is saying a Kobelco SK85 CS 33E SR, which is quite a long name for a machine. And it's wrong. Jonathan Duras going for the Sani electric mini excavator. It's not one of those either. Let me show you just a bit more. There we are. Now that might just clinch it for those in the know or their plant and machinery. That might be it. Betty Price says, "Can I take that Bugatti into my local Asda car park?" Okay, well, many answers here, Betty. First and foremost, if you can afford a Bugatti, you're probably not shopping at Asda. And then again, if you do actually own a Bugatti, the chances are you can park wherever you damn well please. Morning, Betty. Thank you for joining us. Chris Ford says if you pulled it up the site compound with one of those, there will be some raised eyebrows. Yeah, there certainly would. Just realised I'm not even on the screen here, am I? There we are. Now, I can tell you that Garvin over on Mostly Diggers, who, as we know, I've taken it away. Bear with me a second. Garvin is currently 1, 2, 3. He's fourth. He's fourth on the league table. However, he's kind of in the right ballpark with what he's just come up with. Jonathan Duras is saying it's an IHI Mini, and Garvin is saying IHI, and he's also saying IHI 55N. It is not, but you're in the right region. Betty Price is deeply amused. Let me take that away as well. And Chris Ford reckons that Bugatti sounds like a chainsaw on steroids. Do you know, I'm not entirely sure I could get the benefit out of. I mean, obviously, I would get many, many speeding fines. But if anybody's seen the episode of Top Gear with James May tested the Veyron at 300 miles per hour, I would be terrified. I have no qualms about speed at all, but that is rapid. That is really rapid. Dan Cullen's going for the Kato 45NX. It is not. Let me show you a little bit more. There you are. I can tell you a few people are in the right ballpark now, but you've not got the right model yet. What have we got? Dan Cullen's going for the IHI 28. It's not one of those. I'll come back to that in just a moment. Could I have a final victory before the month is out? It's unlikely, but you never know. I'll be back with a bit of Caterpillar in a minute.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Caterpillar is the biggest construction equipment manufacturer in the world by a country mile. And they're no slouch when it comes to technology either. And this time they're using that technology to detect the presence of human beings. Yeah, Big Brother and now Big Caterpillar are watching you. Jim Turner on the Bugatti that we showed you. Sports cars don't really float my boat. They don't really float my boat either, to be perfectly honest with you. I do like a bit of fancy engineering, and that is as fancy as engineering gets. Jonathan Duras, in the same vein, never been a fan of sports cars. They're really nice to look at, which is where I come from. But I like being high up and bigger. Yeah, absolutely. One of the we had an Isuzu Trooper in this family for a while. It's roughly the size of a Hummer. Fantastic piece of kit, and you owned the road. Chris Ford, you're absolutely right. He says Google is now a meltdown. The IHI website has never had so many hits, and one of those hits has actually come up with the right answer. I know Steve Williamson went for a Bobcat E88, but he's a mile away, even though he is already the champion. So let me go through. Dan Cullen went for the IHI 28. It is not. The IHI 30. It is not. The IHO 35. It is not. Jonathan Duras with the IHI 28. Dan Cullen with the IHI 35NX. Dan with the IHI 28N. Gary Muirhead with the IHI 55VX. But I can tell you that the correct answer, Dan Cullen. Dan Cullen, who is already in second place. He's just extended his lead over me, which is slightly annoying. There you are. It is indeed the IHI 65NX. And just to prove it, here we go. There you are. That's what it looks like. That right there is the IHI 65NX. Congratulations to Dan Cullen. I can show you. It currently reads that he's got 12 points. He's actually got 15. I'll update that before tomorrow when we do the official rounding off of the mystery machine for the month. But as you can see, Steve Williamson has won himself. He's won himself. Very nice. I was going to keep this myself. I was given a Lek Attack backpack at Hillhead. I was planning to keep it because I thought that might come in handy, but I think Steve Williamson, with his unassailable lead, has more than deserved it. So, Steve, please do remind me privately of your postal address, and I will get that in the post to you. Quite possibly today. I do have to go into town, so yeah, let me know your postal address as soon as you can, and I will get it in the post immediately. Let me get back to a bit of this. We've just had, what do we have? Caterpillar. We'll be back. We're going to be talking Scotland in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Holly. Join Mark Anthony on The Breakfast Show. We are Ovenden.
Just had a comment from Garvin over at Mostly Diggers on Instagram. Says, operated a very rough IHI 55 in Sydney many moons ago. Very popular out there. It used to be fairly popular here, although it was early doors for mini excavators when they were popular here. Let's have a look. What have we got in the... what's going on with the chat? Here we are. Peter McKenna has just joined us. Peter, good morning to you, my friend. How are you doing? We need a double mystery machine. Do you not think this show goes on for long enough as it is? Chris Schwartz says, never owned a proper sports car. Had some hairy beasts in my time. We're still talking about cars, right? Last being an Astra VXR. Don't drive it very often, otherwise you'd be pulling me out of the hedge bottom every 5 minutes. Yeah, I had for a very. It was old when I got it, but I did have a midlife crisis. Got some tattoos. Got a few bits pierced, and when I bought myself a Porsche, and for the first 6 months I owned it, oh man, it was like heaven. And then you wake up one day, and well, partly, it was like a constant reminder that I was in the midst of a midlife crisis. But then you start to notice that actually it's very uncomfortable, it's a bit smelly, hard to get in and out. So I sold it. And that was it. Mostly Diggers. Garvin says, can we do a last goal wins? Ha ha. Well done, Steve. Yeah, well done indeed. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Peter says, all good. How's you, Mark? All fit and well here, my friend. Good morning to you. Yeah, no, had a splendid evening last night. Went off to see the Deadpool Wolverine film. Highly recommended. Very silly, very sweary, very violent. Bit like a day in my life, to be perfectly honest. Let's have a look. Jonathan Dura says, no, that's not the one. It just, there we are. It's now a Cato Imma. Yes, it is. Shame they pulled out the UK market. They seem to do pretty well at one point. Yeah, they did. No, they did do very well. As I say, when back in the day, before we were inundated by mini excavators, they did very nicely too. Seem to remember they were sold through Blackwood Hodge early doors. I may have imagined that, but I'm not entirely sure. Peter says, I've driven Ferraris and Lambos. Give me a 1990 Vauxhall Cavalier 4x4 3-litre supercharged any day. I've never driven a Lamborghini. I've driven a Ferrari. I've driven multiple Porsches because I went on a Porsche open day once. Done all of those. Wouldn't want to own one of them. Good fun, but I wouldn't want to own one of them. Had a 150 brake horsepower Transit. And man, that was a quick van. Yes, you were probably the one that's been driving up my exhaust pipe while I make my way around the M25. Yes, so last weekend, we did talk about it before the event. We're now going to talk about it after the event. Last weekend, there was the Scottish Plant Operators Association Operator Challenge up in Bonnie, Scotland. Our friend Karen McIntosh and various other people put that on. Well, we now have a champion, and we sent Demolition. Yes, that Demolition. We sent her to report on it all.
Martin Smith from Strathdeep Properties has been crowned Scottish Plant Operator Challenge Champion 2024 after emerging victorious at the national competition over the weekend. Martin won £5,000 as well as an array of exclusive rewards from sponsors including Highland Industrial Supplies and Milwaukee. The event, sponsored by the CITB, took place at Errol Airfield in Perthshire. 44 plant operators from all over the country undertook 8 challenges designed to put their skills to the test. The 8 challenges included the Backhoe Loader Challenge, Telehandler Challenge, Selector Grab Challenge, Trenching, and a Lifting Challenge on a 20-ton excavator. Martin Smith said, "It feels amazing to win, especially because I came into the plant industry late. When I first left school, I worked as a welder fabricator, but growing up in Speyside, I was never far from plant machinery used in farming and I'd always been drawn to farming. When I started working for Strathdeep Properties in 2011, it offered me the perfect balance because the company is involved in farming and property development. So before long I was behind the levers on an excavator and I haven't looked back since. I really enjoyed taking part in the Scottish Plant Operator Challenge. It was a great day out. The challenges were not easy, but I am pleased with how I handled it and just delighted to have won." Speaking about the Scottish Plant Operator Challenge 2024, promoter Callum McIntosh added, "What a weekend. This was the second edition of the Scottish Plant Operator Challenge, and the event is going from strength to strength. We were honoured to have First Minister and MSP for Perthshire North, John Swinney, open the event. We welcomed visitors of all ages and from all over the country. A big thank you to Maurice Leslie who once again allowed us to run the Scottish Plant Operator Challenge alongside the Vintage Working Plant and Tractor Weekend, a firm favourite with plant enthusiasts and local people. Congratulations to Martin Smith, a worthy winner who I hope will inspire other people, especially the younger generation, to consider a career in plant."
Yeah, massive congratulations to Martin Smith, the eventual winner there, but also congratulations to Callum McIntosh and the entire SPOA. I think they've done a fantastic job with that, bearing in mind it was born out of adversity this time last year, and it's gone from strength to strength. Let's have a look. What have we got? We're back on the subject of cars and stuff. Dan Carr saying that the Cavalier 3-litre was an amazing car. Jim Turner, motorbikes are where the real fun is. Not in my experience, it's not. Dan Cullen is saying, who's going to the vintage show this weekend? Not me, unfortunately. Peter McKenna, Gary, keep your pants on. There's Miss Demi looking great. Yes, she certainly is. Jim Turner, I quite agree. And I've had the gravel rash to prove it. That's talking about motorcycles. Jim Turner, I've never binned one, but been dangerously close many times. Unfortunately, I binned one, and that was me done. That was me done. I still have gravel rash from my chopper. You can insert your own jokes there. When you back Demi, congratulations, Martin. And that sounds a sore place to have gravel rash. It does, doesn't it? Gravel rash from your chopper. Right, okay, I think we've covered all of that. We've done the mystery machine. We've covered all of the bits of the question of the day. So I think it's probably time that we played out with a bit of this, and then we will start the news discussion piece in just a moment. I do need to take that away because I don't want that on the screen. Here we go. Play out with this. Yeah, I think we've covered all of the bits and pieces that we need to cover in the show. Obviously, we know that the mystery machine was that. It is the IHI 65NX, if you're not paying attention. That is the current standings, although that is going to change. Steve Williamson will be top regardless, but Dan Cullen is now on 15 points. He could still bag another 3 points tomorrow because we will be doing that again. Yeah, I think that just about covers all of that. So it is time. It is time to get into the news discussion bit. And there's a video in the middle of this, which I've not done before. So stick around. I've often thought that general elections are called general elections because they generally pan out in much the same way. In the run-up to an election, the incumbent government will suddenly and miraculously find a few £1 billion down the back of the sofa at number 10 Downing Street. Armed with that newfound wealth, they promise to spend more on schools and hospitals to ensure that the nation is both educated and healthy. They promise to spend more on both the road and rail network so we can all get about easily in order to make our own individual contributions to the national coffers. Over the course of 3.5 decades, almost all the elections I've reported on have played out in precisely the same way. Give us one more chance and we'll do all the things that we promised to do. Honest. However, the last one didn't follow that well-trodden and time-proven path. There were no promises of increases in expenditure. Rishi Sunak and his pals merely trotted out the same old rhetoric about stopping the small boats. Perhaps if he had revealed the true state of the nation's finances, the small boats might have taken themselves somewhere a little bit more affluent instead. But he didn't. In fact, it wasn't until Chancellor of the Exchequer Rachel Reeves took to her feet in the House of Commons yesterday that we found out just how skint we really are as a nation. Rachel Reeves spoke for almost half an hour to explain the financial black hole that she and her colleagues have inherited. I'm not going to play you all of what she said. I'm merely going to give you the highlights, or maybe that should be lowlights, as they pertain to the construction industry. There's 2.5 minutes of this. You need to pay attention.
The government published its plans for day-to-day spending in the spring budget in March. But when I arrived at the Treasury on the very first day, I was alerted by officials that this was not how much the previous government expected to spend this year. It wasn't even close. In fact, the total pressures on these budgets across a range of areas was an additional £35 billion. Once you account for the slippage in budgets you usually see over a year and the reserve of £9 billion designed to respond to genuinely unexpected events, it means, Mr. Speaker, that we have inherited a projected overspend of £22 billion. Mr. Speaker, the previous government claimed it was levelling up the country. It made promise after promise to the British people. But the spending audit has uncovered that some of those commitments weren't worth the paper that they were written on. So my right honourable friend, the Transport Secretary, will undertake a thorough review of these commitments. As part of that work, she has agreed not to move forwards with projects that the previous government refused to publicly cancel, despite knowing full well that they were unaffordable. That includes proposed work on the A303 and the A27. And my right honourable friend will also cancel the Restoring Our Railway programme, saving £85 million next year, with individual projects to be assessed through her review. In October 2020, the government announced that 40 new hospitals would be built by 2030. Since then, only one new project has opened to patients, and only 6 have started their main construction activity. The National Audit Office were clear that delivery was wildly off track. But since coming into office, it has become clear that the previous government continued to maintain its commitment to 40 hospitals without anywhere close to the funding required to deliver them. The inheritance from the previous government is unforgivable. After the chaos of Partygate, when they knew trust in politics was at an all-time low, they gave false hope to Britain. When people were already being hurt by their cost of living crisis, they promised solutions that they knew could never be paid for. Roads that would never be built, public transport that would never arrive, hospitals that would never treat a single patient. They spent like there was no tomorrow because they knew that someone else would pick up the bill.
Now, let me start by saying that while I am left-leaning, I have no trust or faith in any politician, regardless of what side of the house they're occupying. But there's an important thing to consider in what Rachel Reeves was saying. Despite being granted key worker status, construction was very, very hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. The 40 hospitals we were promised during the last government failed to materialise. The spend on roads and the railways has already been limited and curtailed, and construction has seen record numbers of liquidations right across the entire sector. Rachel Reeves' speech yesterday didn't just confirm that the good ship UK was sinking. She said there will be no, let me do that again. She said that there will be no rescue ships for quite some considerable time. Anyone pinning their hopes on some splurge spending on schools, roads, railways, just had their hopes dashed. Now, I know what you're thinking. In the run-up to the election, the Labour Party pledged to build 1.5 million new homes. Now, given that those won't actually be paid for by the government, maybe the house building sector will once again be the industry saviour. It would be nice to think so. However, there is a problem. In order to meet that Labour Party pledge, the nation's house builders will have to build houses at a faster rate than ever before. In fact, they will have to build houses at roughly twice the rate that they're currently building them today. Is that even possible? In all the years I've been writing about construction, the sector has never once hit its house building targets. There's nothing to suggest that that will change anytime soon. The planning system is broken. We refuse to convert desolate and deserted shopping centres and high streets for housing. We can't figure out what's green belt and what's brown belt, and we don't have enough people to match the current demand, let alone a demand that is double what we're doing today. Sadly, if you or your company was sat on its hands hoping for a post-election resurgence, I'm afraid you may have to wait a little bit longer. I'm going to throw this open to the chat in just a second, but one of the things that stood out for me, among other things, one of the projects that have been shelved is the A303, which was the Stonehenge Tunnel. Now, I realise that from an environmental standpoint, it was controversial from the moment it was put into planning, but it was given the nod, it was given the green light, and work was due. I don't know if it has started, but it was certainly due to start. And now we've taken a step back. So an ambitious project we've taken a step back from. Does that remind you of anything? HS2, for example. We have the industry's future in the hands of people that can just, like that, cancel multi-million, multi-billion pound projects that mean employment and wages and apprenticeships and training. All of that can be cancelled like that. So, what have you got to say for yourselves, people? Every government comes up short. They are professional liars. Yeah, let's be absolutely clear here. This business about arriving to find that the cupboard is bare, there's no money in the pot, not unusual. Labour did it to the Conservative Party some years ago, 13 years ago, I think, and they've done exactly the same thing. They can fight amongst themselves. I have precious little time for politics or politicians. Where I do have an issue, though, is the fact that the public purse finances an awful lot of what takes place in this industry, be it demolition or construction or all the allied bits. And because of the mismanagement of the economy by the last government, we've now got, how long is it going to take for the Labour Party to sort this out? Even if it takes 2 years, 3 years, I think even 3 years is going to be ambitious. That means that where we are today with all of the liquidations and the administrations and people seeking work, reduced workloads, reduced sales of equipment and all that goes with it, we are looking at down the barrel of that being the situation for another 2 or 3 years. And that doesn't even take into account the fact that we could have another global economic hiccup. What happens if Kamala Harris gets elected? Does that have a positive effect on the global economy? or does it have a negative one? If Donald Trump gets back into the White House, does that have a positive effect? Does that have a negative effect? The war in Ukraine shows no sign of ending. What impact is that going to have on our economy? The situation over in Gaza, what effect is that having on global stability and the global economy? All of those things are currently stacked against the UK construction and demolition industry. Also, things like the cost of fuel. It is one of the biggest costs facing construction and demolition companies. We've already had one energy crisis. First of all, we couldn't get fuel, and then when we could get fuel, we were paying through the nose for it. What if that happens again? It was bad enough when we were doing it while the industry was still going great guns. What happens if the industry is not going great guns? What if we are on our uppers, we are really struggling, and then we're hit again? What happens? We're already seeing record numbers of liquidations in this industry. And if and that is at a time when, post COVID, the industry was pretty busy. I realize it was in pockets. I do realize it was in pockets, but it was pretty busy. What if that busyness completely goes away? What happens then? Dan Carr says that's not great news. We've got to realize money doesn't grow on trees. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Personally, my personal feeling is, should we be spending the money in the money that the nation has in the way that it does? Do we really need the armed forces to the level that they are? And I realize some people will argue that we do, and you've got to have some kind of defense and everything else. But what are they defending? If we go through another 3 or 4 years of no progress, no new building, you're going to end up with a very well-equipped army, navy, and air force defending a nation that has got insufficient housing, insufficient schools, insufficient hospitals, roads that are falling apart. What are you defending at that point? Some of these companies are using the bank as bailouts. They are. Obviously that's an area of keen interest for me because morning Worthing, because that's something that's been going on in my part of the world. But there's been a couple of prosecutions recently of construction companies that jumped on the bounce back loan thing and decided, well, hopefully there were so many people applying for bounce back loans that they won't notice the fact that we haven't paid back. They have. They knew what they were dealing with before they got voted in. They just lied about what they said they could achieve. Now they're in, it's too late. The manifesto is not a legal contract. It's just a bullshit carrot to dangle in front of the voters. It kind of goes back to what I was saying at the very outset of this discussion. That's traditionally the way that general elections have worked. The incumbent government always does the same thing. Yes, it has been a period of austerity, but we're due to have an election in 3 months' time, and suddenly we've found some more money, so we're going to spend more on hospitals and schools and roads and railway, all the things that gain votes. I'm not entirely convinced that they knew what they were letting themselves in for, but I do agree 100% with Jim, to the point where I don't even know why. Well, I know why they publish manifestos, but I don't know why we bother reading them. Have we ever looked back at any government, a red one or a blue one or anything in between? Have we ever looked back and said, well, there's their manifesto, and they ticked every single one of the boxes? Not in my lifetime. Not in my lifetime. I mean, in actual fact, it's more a case of, here's the manifesto. Did they tick any of the boxes? That's generally the case. And I just, the government has made pledges about updating, long overdue, but updating the planning regime here in the UK to make it easier and faster to build houses. That's good. Yeah, that's a good thing. I'm all for it. I'm backing it wholeheartedly. I think that's a good thing. I think it's a step in the right direction. But even if they gave some sort of carte blanche tomorrow and said, because we are desperate to build this 1.5 million new homes, we are going to just open the floodgates. If you've got a plot of land and you want to build on it, knock yourselves out. Even if they said that, Could we? We don't have the people. We don't have the people. And I mean, I saw today, and I may be doing something a bit more on this a bit later in the week, but the CITB is planning to present its plans, should it be given the nod, for another 3 years. It's planning to produce its plans for its next 3 years in September of this year. And the CITB is exactly the same as a government. Here are our pledges. Here are our promises. Here are the initiatives that we fully intend to back over the next 3 years. Have they ever? It's just some words. Just some words. And guarantee, I mean, I almost guaranteed they will get the nod from the industry, because better the devil you know, I guess. And even if they do, we will have another 3 years of the CITB falling well short of what it's done in the past and what it intended to do in the future. And in 3 years' time, we'll all sit around and say, oh, CITB, not fit for purpose. But let's give them another go. And that's exactly what we've got here. It's exactly what we've got here. And I, as I say, I am left-leaning, but I feel for the construction minister and the housing minister and whatever the levelling up minister is called this week. You know, you come in, you know, aiming to be a new broom, even if you do it purely driven by ego. You know, I'm going to make a name for myself by redrawing the housing landscape of the UK, you know, making more affordable housing and so on down the line. And you literally 3 weeks into the job and somebody comes and knocks on your door and said, you know, those plans and you know that job that you've got, yeah, you can't do any of that because the cupboard's bare. Jim Turner says the armed forces are there as a deterrent, a bit like an alarm box on your house or a steering lock on your car. You wouldn't get rid of either just because you haven't been robbed in the last few years. I realise this is an ideal world, and I realise that the state of the nation, or the state of the global landscape, suggests very strongly otherwise. How much money would the world, you know, the governments of the world save if we could all just get along? You know, if the Americans weren't constantly fear-mongering about a potential attack from Russia, North Korea, or anywhere else, or China. If we weren't convinced that, you know, even though we've been, I know we like to take jabs at each other, but you know, we haven't had a decent war with the French for what, 200 years, something like that. Chances are they're not coming over anytime soon. Why would they? Why would they? They wouldn't be able to get over here anyway, because the channel is just full of small boats apparently. So do we really need that level? And as I say, wouldn't it just be better if we could all get along? And I think if you were bearing in mind, you know, we don't serve the government serves us the people. If you went out into the street, or let's do it here, we've got people, Jim, Chris, Dan, Gary, Steve, all these people. If I asked you, you know, if there's, let's just say there's £1 billion. There's £1 billion that we've just found down the back of the sofa in the Chancellor of the Exchequer's back office. And it is down to you to decide where that should be spent. Would you spend that on missiles, helicopters, tanks, gunships? Or would you spend it on hospitals or schools or road? Answers on a postcard. The door is open. Please. No, Steve, it's not for private use. I'm asking, you know, if you're, let's make you all Prime Minister for 15 seconds. You've got £1 billion. Where are you spending it? Please let me know. Betty Price says governments need to be made more accountable to the public. They literally get away with murder. They do. And where we have an issue, well, there's two issues. Where we have a couple of issues is we only get to vote on them every 4 or 5 years. That's one thing. So, I mean, if Keir Starmer turns out to be the single worst Prime Minister in the history of God's earth, we can't get shot of him for another 4 or 5 years. So there's one thing. The other thing as well is the way that the system works. And as I say, it cuts both ways. Both have done it. Both have, you know, Labour have done it to Conservatives. Conservatives have done it for Labour. you're not ultimately going to be around when the shit hits the fan. You know, if Rachel Reeves is to be believed, there is a £22 billion black hole in the UK economy. And, you know, Rishi Sunak will walk away, and most of his ministers will walk away, and not their problem. You know, Rishi Sunak will probably buy himself a nice new home in California somewhere and go and put his feet up. It's not his problem. Somebody else has got to deal with that. And exactly the same thing will happen again. You know, if the government decides to go and spend a whole heap of money on housing migrants and stuff, free to do so, and maybe that is the way that the Labour Party is leaning. And that also leads to a 22 billion black hole in the nation's coffers. Not going to be their problem, because if the nation decides we're not particularly happy with that, by the time the shit hits the fan once again, they will be somewhere else. Our friend Wolfie has just joined from the States. Steve Williamson, in answer to the question, there you are: roads, buildings, upgrading the country, bridges, etc. I can never, and I really do need to write this on a post-it or something. There is this statistic that if you invest £1 in construction, the national economy gets something like, and I'm doing the figure off the top of my head, I think it's £2.68 worth of value goes back into the coffers. And when you think about that from a road perspective, you know, if it's hard to get from one place to another place, you're not going to encourage investment. You're not going to encourage employment, which is part of the idea of the HS2 in the first place, you know, to make it easy for people that are living in Birmingham and ultimately Manchester and Leeds to work in London, but then to go back home again, and vice versa. So that was basically the idea. Obviously, that got screwed. But think about that. You know, if we can't move people and goods around the country, how on earth are we going to survive as a nation? We've already seen there's been a moratorium on road building in Wales for the best part of a year. It's almost like going back to the Stone Ages. You know, 20-mile-an-hour speed limits and no new roads. And when you think about what a new road is, okay, it's very easy to look at the end goal. Look, we've got a shiny new bit of tarmac, but think about what goes into that. You know, there will be money earned by the quarries that are taking the stone out of the ground to lay that road. There will be bitumen companies that will earn a few quid by providing the bitumen that goes with the stone to make the road. There'll be construction, well, there might well be demolition companies that will make a few quid clearing the way. There'll be construction companies making a few quid because they're going to build the road. There will be training companies that will make a few quid because they've got to train up the staff. There's going to be plant hire companies that make a few quid because they are supplying the equipment. And then when it's all over and done with and you've got some shiny new tarmac, you've now made it easier for Joe Bloggs to get from here, to sell his goods, to sell his services, or basically to get around the country. Everybody wins. No. The money's just spent on the wrong thing. From CITB governments, it's all take, and spend money where it makes us look good, not on what actually matters. See, and that's one of the things that I find so unbelievably stupid. If I decided, trust me, I won't, but if I were to decide to run for some sort of political office, you know full well how the UK taxpayer thinks. That, I mean, being absolutely honest, and I listen, I consider myself one of them. I vote first and foremost based on which party I believe will put the most money in my back pocket. So the one that is offering to cut taxes or whatever it might be. So that would be my first point of interest. My second point of interest would be, if I want people to vote for me, what is it that people care about? And it is hospitals, schools, roads, rail. It's obvious. It's there. We know this. You know, nobody ever won outside of wartime. Nobody ever secured the popular vote by spending more on missiles and bombs. During the war, different matter. But we're not currently at war, at least not externally. It's so obvious. I'm husband, father, grandfather. I'd like to think that my children are too old, but I'd like to think that my grandchildren, if they fall ill, they will have access to an NHS hospital that will fix them. I'd like to think they will have access to a well-equipped, well-run school that is going to prepare them for a future career, future prosperity, and everything else. And I'd like my daughter, who is the mother to those grandchildren, to be able to drive on a road that is not full of potholes, so she's not constantly repairing her car. It's not. I'm not asking for the world. Just asking for very straightforward things. Betty Price has just given me the thumbs up. Steve says CITB just had their Operator of the Year crap. How much did that cost? How much of that money could have gone into improving training and card schemes? Bearing in mind, and I realise that's got nothing to do with Rachel Reeves, but the CITB in the past few years has spent money on reports into things like gender equality and migrant labour and what have you. It's not their job. When construction companies pay into the levy, and the levy is what keeps the CITB afloat, that's what pays their wages. At no point did they say, yeah, well, make sure you take some of that money and do a report on gender equality. I can tell you, there isn't gender equality in the UK demolition and construction industry. At best, we've got 14% female. We don't need a survey. What we need is more action taken on the people that make UK demolition and construction sites an utterly toxic work environment, so women don't want to join. Take them out. We don't need a survey because we've now got more women coming into the industry and sticking around. We don't need any of that. But they also spunked a load of cash on, I think it was TikTok influencers. Yes, if we have young people in hard hats doing their little dances on TikTok and, hey, construction's I don't know what that is. Construction is a career for you. Look, I'm a hip and groovy TikToker, and look, I can wear a hard hat. Bollocks. It's absolute bollocks. It's a waste of money. Steve, I totally agree with you. Steve says it's like a business not doing well, not looking after their own. Go away and spend all the money on a party. Yeah. And listen, when you get into the real meat of that within the UK construction industry or the UK demolition industry as well, how many times do you see that? How many times have we seen companies going into liquidation, particularly over the last couple of years, gone into liquidation, and they owe the Inland Revenue or HMRC £1.5 million. They owe plant hirers £500,000. They owe scaffolding companies £500,000. They owe agencies and recruitment people £500,000, and they've gone down the tubes, and they are about to re-emerge. And the guy that owned the company is still driving around in a Ferrari or a Porsche or a Rolls Royce or something, same as it ever was. I should keep David Byrne on hand just to do his same as it ever was. Always like that. So yes, there we are. As I say, I don't want to be the prophet of doom. I really don't. But I think, as I say, despite the fact that I'm left-leaning, did I honestly believe that Keir Starmer was going to swoop into Downing Street and turn the world on its head and make it a better place? No, I didn't. But I did, bearing in mind his commitment to housing and his commitment to overthrowing or overhauling the planning system, there was a bit of me that thought, you never know, maybe he might just come along and make things a little bit easier and make things a little bit better. And it turns out he's now going to do it with his hands tied behind his back because the cupboard is bare. There is no money in the box. So anybody that was pinning their hopes on a sudden resurgence of the UK construction and demolition industry in light of a new government, you can have a bit of a wait, I'm afraid. Sad but true. People, that will do us for another day, and quite possibly not another dollar, because there are no dollars sloshing about the place. I'm going to be back here again tomorrow, 10 a.m. for more of the same. I mean, we may go on to the CITB thing. I'll see what I can find on this planned approach to the consensus in September. I'll keep you posted on that, but I'm sure we can find something to talk about. Until then, everybody, go and have a fantastic day. Enjoy the sunshine. I know it's warm out there, but enjoy the time. Steve Williamson says, I never knew construction would end up having grown men putting the right shape in a hole. But yeah, let's screw all our experienced operators. You're going back to this business of operator tests and let's have a look. Yeah, the operator of the year crap. Yeah, and I listen. I've done a few of those, and I've done them with Volvo and stuff. We've done it for fun, but does that prove anything? We have multiple operators in our midst here. When was the last time you were at work behind the levers of an excavator, and somebody said to you, "Yes, I need you to put this triangle block through a triangular hole. Make like a Toblerone." Has that ever happened to you? Bet it hasn't. Enough, people. Go have a day, would you? And I'll see you tomorrow for the final Mystery Machine of July. We already know who's won. Steve, don't forget to send me your address. We already know who's won. But also, not only does it mark the end of July, it also means that the question of the day will be stopping as of tomorrow, only temporarily, because we are going to throw over to our World Championship of excavators. I want you to vote on what excavator you believe to be the best out of the two that we present. And I can quickly show you. There you are. Our first match, our first face-off will be between JCB in the red corner, all the way from the UK, against Shantwei from China. We'll be doing that day after tomorrow. So hope to see you then. Until then, everybody, have a lovely day. Sorry to have rained on your parade, but kind of my job, isn't it? See you tomorrow. All the best.